Hello everyone and welcome. Sit back, relax, make a cup of tea or whatever you like to drink and get ready for new stories from Yellowcat. Send your own favorite stories in the comments below and maybe they'll be in our new video. So subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed yet. Let's get started. Could you share your alright then I resigned story? Part 4. It was my job to do repairs at a multinational property management company, but the way it worked was that you were hired to work in a certain building and weren't used to being moved around. Every week I worked the same hours, and the only time I worked extra hours was at my building. I worked from Thursday to Monday. I'd been working at this job for a little over a year and still hadn't gotten a pay raise or a review of my work. The RM told me that those were done by the property managers and paid for by the yearly budget when I asked about them. The budget for the year had already been turned in, and we didn't have a property manager for me to review it anyway. In order to get one, I was told I would have to wait until next year. As you might expect, that conversation made me lose my attitude and work ethic, and I began looking for a new job. After that, my grandmother died, and I had to take some time off work to be with family during the grief. After I got back, I got pneumonia, which turned into a sinus infection, which made me miss even more time. During those 2 weeks, the RM told me she needed me to work at another property in a different part of the city on my normal day off. I didn't have a car at the time and was going to the doctor for my health problems. I told my assistant manager that I couldn't fulfill that request and that they should let the RM know. This didn't sit well with my RM, who thought that my recent absences and lack of motivation were signs that I needed more supervision. So on Friday, my Tuesday, I was told that my schedule would be changing right away to Monday through Friday and I didn't need to show up for my weekend shifts. My newfound weekend anger and thought led me to decide an hour after my shift began on Monday to walk into my building and drop my keys on the manager's desk. After 1 week, I started my new job just 1 block away. I used to deliver packages for a business like UPS. On 2016-2017 New Year's Eve, I was called at 6 a.m. and asked to deliver some luggage to some tourists. My boss said it would take no more than 3 hours, so I agreed to do it. It ended up taking 6 hours, and I drove back at 150 kilometers an hour in the snow to get home to my family before midnight. I know I shouldn't have put my life at risk for that, but whatever. And I wouldn't have made it home without my wallet. The car was almost out of gas, and I was about 200 kilometers from home. The company gas card required that you go inside the gas station, but none of them were open, so I paid for it myself, kept the receipt, and asked them to reimburse me. Took a little over a month and a lot of emails back and forth between me and my boss to get my money back. The machine didn't give me a receipt. In addition, this was always going on at work. As soon as I put the packages in my van, I started delivering them right away. My coworker ate lunch and talked for 45 minutes to an hour. When I was done delivering all my packages, I sometimes had more than 2 hours left on my 6-hour shift. I wasn't allowed to take a longer lunch break even though I had done everything I was supposed to do. I also had to help my coworker finish their area, which wasn't a problem in and of itself, but I thought I should get a little something for finishing early. I was mad that I wasn't paid extra for finishing my work early, and I'd been mad since the beginning of the year, so I quit the company and went to work for someone who paid $3 more an hour. Working for a 7-Up as a merchandiser was my job. It's pretty easy. Just go to a store, stock it with goods, and do it again and again until you've finished all of your stores. The BS begins when a new account manager is hired and, in essence, begins to assert her authority over the situation. Noteworthy, the regional manager and account manager were both aware of my part-time employment. Till the middle of summer arrived, everything ran smoothly for the first couple of weeks. This is when the busy season began. Large number of retailers are making sales left and right, and the product itself is effectively selling itself. On the other hand, as time went on, I began to get the impression from the account manager that she's not the most intelligent person. In spite of the fact that the product was being filled, I received multiple text messages expressing dissatisfaction with the situation. It appears that the account manager is of the opinion that there are unoccupied positions in the company. If it were summertime, you'd think that people would be purchasing soft drinks in large quantities. This manager and regional manager suggest that I send them images of my work. Despite the fact that I complied with their request, the account manager is still dissatisfied, and as a result, I receive a number of angry phone calls over the course of several weeks. I have another meeting scheduled, and they've requested that I work every day of the week instead of just 5 days out of the week. I should mention that this was a full-time position. Their justification for this is that they didn't mind paying merchandisers overtime as long as they didn't go overboard with it. To add insult to injury, my schedule was not the kind of thing that was set in stone. Rather, it was more of a guideline that indicated how long a typical day should be. Consequently, no one's really keeping track of my hours anyway. My manager believes that working up to 60 hours a week will help me become more proficient at my job, so I'm looking at doing that right now. As an interesting side note, the account manager's car accident was caused by her, and she'll be unable to report to work for a week. Not only do I continue to send pictures, but this time I send them directly to the regional manager. I continue to do my job exactly the same way. He did not have any complaints at all, not even the slightest. This is further evidence that the account manager is being extremely picky and does not appear to comprehend the fact that stock can very well be removed from the shelves. Although it seems apparent, the account manager seems to believe that I'm not using our spaces to their full potential and am lazily filling them. It was when I was called on a day off to set up for a sale that I finally reached my breaking point. This was before the week-long BS had a chance to take root and become effective. A notification was sent to me 1 hour prior to the beginning of the sale. Considering that I was still in bed when I received this text, this was not even close to being enough time to get ready. As I understood it, at that time I got the text, my only task for the day was to make sure the product was as stocked as possible. I received a text from another account manager midday asking, you're supposed to be stocking other stores, right? No, I did not know this because I didn't hear from anyone telling me that was my responsibility. The lack of coordination and organization was becoming increasingly apparent, and to make matters worse, the hours were interfering with my previously mentioned part-time job, and I was now also running late to the second job. I was furious and texted my bosses to tell them that I could not work in the conditions I was in any longer, and that it didn't seem fair that I had to work long hours with little to no assistance. It was always expected of me to organize our stock up to 6 pallets at a time on my own, while other soft drink merchandisers had at least 2 employees stocking their shelves every day. I literally had a day where I was supposed to organize our pallets, and the account manager came to meet with me just to berate and belittle me by telling me, I'm not helping you, I've done all my stores. My furious text is answered with a very gloomy Ziagax, please bring your uniform to me text. With a loud F you, I'm going home, I met with the account manager, gave her my uniform, and left the parking lot. It's unfortunate that I had to quit. The position was well-paying, simple to learn, and the regional manager was a pleasure to work with. I simply believe that he was far too accepting of someone who was brand new to the account manager role and who lacked any management experience of common sense. Tell me a scary story about your HOA, COA, or neighbors, Part 4. My husband was already married when I got married, and he owned a home in the infamous planned utopia with village covenants. He owned it outright, no mortgage. When we got married in 2007, our 1976 built home still had its original single-pane builder-grade windows. There were window frames that were falling apart, and on those, duct tape was partially holding the glass in place. Furthermore, it was nearly hard to open or close the patio slider. We therefore concluded that it was time to replace the windows. After obtaining quotes from window companies, we selected the most suitable one and filed an exterior alteration request, along with copies of the window company's brochures and house photos, to the Architectural Review Committee. It took me 3 months back and forth with the committee to finally get their approval to replace those windows. However, I did learn from the experience, and in less than 15 minutes at one of their meetings, I was able to obtain approval to add a new master suite above the garage. My payment to our contractor to accompany me to the meeting and assist in answering their inquiries helped with that one. Additional tales from this region that I've read or heard about include, originally, a man's house was constructed with a kind of fiberboard siding that mimics the appearance of vertical boards. It's infamous for crumbling, growing moss, and wicking up water from the bottom edge. Standard horizontal run vinyl siding has replaced the vertical fiberboard siding found on many, if not most, of the original homes. This man made the decision to alter something that a few of his neighbors had previously done as well. Everything went smoothly, including maintaining the color of his home and hiring a professional crew, but he neglected to obtain committee approval. Someone discovers 20 years later that the siding change on that house was not approved by anyone. He apologizes and asks for permission to be applied retroactively, something that is permissible and even mentioned in the covenants. They force him to remove the vinyl siding from his house and replace it with vertical fiberboard siding after rejecting the retroactive approval, since they're able to. The local newspaper held a landscaping competition a few years back. Winners for the city's most exquisite landscaping projects were selected. Not pre-approved by the committee, the winner and runner-up had raised flower beds and, in some cases, small retaining walls or water features. The committee checked for approvals after being alerted to the winner of the newspaper contest, and each and every one of those homeowners was notified that they were out of compliance. The resolutions, if any way, were probably different, I'm not sure. A few blocks away from my son's school is a house owned by a chainsaw sculpture artist. Right now, she's fighting to keep some of her creations out in her backyard. I think she's asking to be allowed to keep her yard dragon, which is about 6 feet high and absolutely amazing, a tiger prowling through some shrubs, and a small fawn curled up under one. We were moving into an upper-level rental that had a driveway that was almost shared with the neighbors. I'm talking about there being about 6 inches of grass between the two of them. In order to unload a mattress, we pulled onto the side of the neighbor's driveway. As soon as she had just enough time to remove all the straps, this woman came rushing out of the house and began yelling and cursing at the person to get off her property. She'll be referred to as Sharon. Without losing my composure, I explained that it'll only be a moment before we move. Sharon is still yelling at her to get moving, and so it is. Do I remember correctly that this was their second driveway? They did not make use of it. Behind their house was where that was. What a kind welcome to the community. Sharon makes the decision that it's acceptable for us to park on her side approximately 3 months later. She asked if it was nice inside. Well, duh, Sharon, or we wouldn't be living there. After that, she goes on to explain that the previous tenants were involved in the production and distribution of illegal substances, to the point where, before we moved in, the entire house was remodeled to accommodate our needs. Sharon says that when the previous tenants lived in the house, someone drove up in a car, approached the porch with a rock, and threw it toward the porch, damaging the door. Due to this reason, it was strictly forbidden for anyone to park on her side of the driveway, which was separated by a grass layer measuring 6 inches. We appreciate Sharon providing us with this crucial information about our resident. I feel perfectly safe now. Background. It has been a little over a year since we moved into our HOA. Even in our previous HOA homes, we had never experienced such insanity. I'll begin on moving day, day 0. Strange. No hellos, vacant stares, and no wave in return. After a few weeks, they at last identified themselves as the board president. Still, the exchange was strange. It seems like they were concealing something about themselves because of how many phony gestures and praises they were giving out. I sensed they were up to no good from the moment we were introduced. We remained friendly with them until we received permission to build our fence. We've had discussions and exchanged all the paperwork required for this fence to be approved. They didn't say anything for 2 weeks. No updates, no text replies, no discussion of their opinions regarding our fence. After receiving approval from the board, we erected our fence. They went into panic mode and attempted to halt the construction, even threatened to send us a cease and desist letter. We haven't been friendly since, but there's been bad blood ever since. I've tried to patch things up, but they've remained, to put it mildly, petty. Just to make sure we were correct regarding our property line, they employed 2 surveyor contractors. We learned from the neighborhood that they were power tripping a year later, nitpicking compulsively, firing neighbors for the smallest of things, and even calling the police when a 4-year-old stumbled across their lawn. Really nasty people. Once the neighborhood had had enough, they unilaterally signed a petition to be kicked off the board. The new leaders are doing fairly well so far. They stayed in the neighborhood nonetheless. From then on, they simply remain in their home, close the HOA Facebook page, and lurk around our boundary. They've recently become more hostile toward my wife. They yell at her for picking up sticks from a large branch that fell into her yard and for having our dog outside on a leash. It's not acceptable to ignore people in this way. I'm not sure why some people feel it's okay to harass their neighborhood in this way. If you want to watch the part 3, click the link here. Thank you for subscribing, the likes, and comments. We're very happy to see you all in the comments too. Thanks for your support.